मौसम मुहम्मद वअला अहले बैतिहि त्वय्यबीन त्वाहिरीन अल-मअसूमीन अल-मज़लूमीन वलअनतुल्लाहि अला अअदाइहिम अजमईन सल्लल्लाहु अलैका या अबा अब्दुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैका या इब्न रसूलिल्लाह रूही व जिस्मी व अरवाहुल आलमीन लकल फिदा या गरीब या मज़लूम या शहीद बि अर्ज़ि करबला अम्मा बअद फ़क़द क़ाल अल्लाहु सुब्हानहु व तआला फ़ी किताबिहिल मजीद व क़ौलुहुल हक़्क़ बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम वलिल्लाहिल अस्माउल हुस्ना फ़दऊहु बिहा सल्लु अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद। अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू। First, let me say it's a great honor and a privilege to be here in front of you. My first ever visit to Kansas City. I wasn't too far away for a long time. I used to live in Denver, but never been to Kansas City. When we open the TV these days, and I'm sure you don't need me to remind you, we see so much negativity about Islam. In fact, many a time, I personally dread just to open the news because most of what is there is about Islam or Muslims, and most of it is negative. We all know about it. But the truth is, there is a very rich spiritual, beautiful dimension of Islam that we as Muslims hardly talk about. Because Islam is built on the concept of ihsan and adl, beauty and justice. Indeed, the concept of beauty is pervasive, is all over Islam. Unfortunately, as I say, we hardly talk about it or even talk or discuss about it. To start with, where does beautiful or beauty come from in Islam? There's a very beautiful hadith. Some say it's hadith Qudsi, in which Allah is reported to have said, Allahu jamilun wa yuhibbul jamal, that God is beautiful and He loves beauty. I don't know about you, but as a youngster growing up in Zanzibar, which is in Africa, I never thought of Allah as beautiful. I was brought up to believe that God is dictatorial, dandak saath rekhta, just waiting to smack you, as they say in Persian, kotak. That somehow God was a kind of a dictator. We used to fear God. But in reality, God is beautiful. And not only is God beautiful, but He loves beauty. If you've been to Denver, I don't know if you have been, but you'll see what true beauty is. In fact, I used to joke that it's more sawab to live in Denver. Because, it's a mile-high city, We are closer to Allah there. But the truth is, you would experience the beauty of God and the creation that He has created. Not only is God beautiful, but the names of God, we know them, but we hardly think of them as beautiful. We call them Asma'ul Husna. Remember this, my sisters and brothers. Anytime you hear or see the word Hassan, Hussein, Husn, Ihsan, Muhsin, or anything to do with Husn, it means beauty. Because God is beautiful. And He loves beauty, and His names are the most beautiful names. When we say Rahman or Rahim or Salam or Muhaymin and so on, the 99 beautiful names, Allah says, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. The most beautiful names belong to Allah, belong to God. فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. That you invoke God, call God through His names. You don't just call God like that. You use the beautiful names. Why? Because when you use those beautiful names, you inject within yourself some of God's beauty within yourself too. You put those names of beauty within you too. So God is beautiful, And when you read the Quran, you will see these terms like husn, ihsan, muhsin continuously coming through the Quran. That's why I say that beauty is pervasive. Pervasive means it is subsumes. Everything is about beauty in Islam. This is a message that we need to get out not only to ourselves, but to our non-Muslim friends. And it's amazing that not only is God beautiful, not only are His names beautiful, but He creates beautiful things. How many a time, wherever you come from, you walk, for example, near the sea, or you see the sunrise or sunset, or you are in the jungle and you hear the birds chirping away, you see woods, you see the mountains, you feel a sense of serenity, peace and tranquility within you. You know why you do that? Because the beauty outside is so overpowering, so powerful, that it injects and puts beauty within you too. You feel at peace with yourself and peace with the one who created you and created the beauty outside you. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ala takbir. Allahu Akbar. Ala risalah. Ya Rasulullah. Ala hadri. Ya Ali. It's amazing, there's a beautiful hadith from our Prophet in which the Prophet says, God made you beautiful. The most beautiful creatures of Allah are us. God has made us beautiful. The Prophet says, God made you beautiful. Now you make your character beautiful too. In other words, not only are we supposed to look beautiful, but more importantly, we are supposed to act beautifully too. And we are supposed to act most beautifully not only with each other, but more importantly with non-Muslims. This verse is in the Quran, chapter 16, verse 125. Surah Al-Nahl is named after the bees. And yet Allah says in one portion, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izatil hasana." That invite people to the path of your Lord with maw'idah, with admonishment, with preaching. And beautiful hasana, maw'idatul hasana. In other words, when you invite people, do it in a beautiful way. Sometimes when people speak from the mimbar, they're ferocious. They shout their heads off. You start wondering, what has the mimbar done wrong to you? Why can't we speak softly and nicely? That is the way that the Prophet used to speak. But the verse doesn't end there. وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. The Quran says that when you speak to these people, and the Quran here is referring to those who you are supposed to invite to Islam. In other words, to non-Muslims. وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. And when you talk to them, even when you dispute to them, speak to them in the most beautiful way. Not only in a good way, not in a nice way, but the verse, the word that the Quran uses, ahsan, which is a superlative as we call it in English, not in a beautiful way, the most beautiful way. When you speak to others, you speak to them in the most beautiful way. Why? Because that is the best way to invite others to Islam. In the most beautiful, purposeful preaching. It's a very, the character of the Prophet himself was beauty. That he is sending Mu'adh to Yemen to invite people. And you know what he says? He says, Ya Mu'adh, Bashir wa la tunfir. Oh Mu'adh, attract people to your way. Don't repel them. Talk to people in such a way that through your character, through your speech, they will come to Islam. Yes, the Quran, as I say, it talks of beauty and wants us to base our demeanor, our behavior on beauty. Look at this verse in chapter 9, verse 6. وَإِنْ أَحَدٌ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ إِسْتَجَارَكَ فَأَجِّرْهُ حَتَّى يَسْمَعَ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ. You're living in a Muslim country, supposing. And if a mushrik, not even a non-Muslim, not even a Ahlul Kitab, a mushrik, an associator, comes to you today, by the way, we're talking of asylum, of refugees. The Quran talks about asylum 1400 years ago. If one of the mushriks comes to you seeking protection, O Muhammad, what should you do? Tell him you are mushrik, go away? On the contrary, the Quran commands the Prophet, فَأَجِّرْهُ. Then you must give them protection. Why? حَتَّى يَسْمَعَ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ. So that through you, they can hear the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, through us, we become the vessels, the medium in which Allah's message is preached to others. Not only the Prophet, you and me, we all become the ambassadors of God. حَتَّى يَسْمَعَ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ ثُمَّ أَبْلِغْهُ مَأْمَنًا. And the Quran continues that when he or she wants to leave, make sure they go to a place of safety. Don't dump them in the desert. They are human beings. Take them to a place of safety. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَوْمٌ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. This is because they are a people who don't know the truth. You know. Because you know, then your responsibility is greater. We are not more superior to others. We are more responsible to the others. This is what Islam creates in us. Not superiority. Responsibility to deliver the message of Allah. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alayhi. This is part of God's beauty. The beauty of Allah is so pervasive that we even name our children with names of beauty. It doesn't make sense in English. You never call your daughter Miss Pretty. You never call your son in English, my son's name is handsome. It sounds ridiculous, isn't it? What's your son's name? My son's name is handsome. Her name is pretty, or her name is beautiful. It sounds almost ridiculous. But in our language, our culture, we do. We call somebody Hassan, don't we? We call them Hussein. We call them Muhsin. We call them Ihsan. We call a daughter Jamila. What is Jamila? Pretty. We call somebody Ziba. In Khayli Ziba is very beautiful, very pretty. We call somebody by the name of Ziba. Don't you know people by the name of Ziba? Don't you know people by the name of Noor? What's your son's name? My son's name is Light. But we do. Why? Because in our Islamic understanding, names are not adjectives, they are attributes. Adjectives describe things. Attributes instill things, qualities. In other words, when you are named after light or pretty or handsome, we are supposed to reflect those light, that prettiness, that handsome in our behavior to others. We put them inside so that we can objectify it outside. That's why, as I say, that even our names are named after prettiness, after beauty. And it's very interesting that we sometimes practice what I call bumper sticker Islam. Bumper sticker, you have those bumper stickers, you know? I haven't seen it. My God is a carpenter. That's what they mean, that Jesus was a carpenter. Muslim bumper sticker says, I love Islam. I love Allah. I don't know where Allah comes from, but because there's only Allah, you can't say Allah, because the Al is already in Allah. But anyway, I love Al-Islam. I love Al-Iman. You will never see a verse in the Quran in which Allah says He loves Islam. You will never see that. You will never see a verse in the Quran which Allah says He loves Iman. Because Allah doesn't love titles, He loves actions. He loves actions. So wherever you see Allah loves in the Quran, after that is a beautiful act. Inna Allah yuhibbus salihin. God loves those who do good deeds. Inna Allah yuhibbul muhsinin. Allah loves those who do beautiful deeds. Inna Allah yuhibbus sabirin. Inna Allah yuhibbut tawabin. Those who do tawbah and so on. In other words, it is actions that Allah wishes to see in our behavior. Not just empty words, not just titles. My sisters and brothers, this has been a major theme for me all the time I talk about. That Islam is not about just titles or slogans. It's about acts. Wilfred Cantwell Smith was a professor, a wonderful human being. He was Christian. He was a minister, a very prominent professor but who wrote about religion with great sensitivity. He did not demean or degrade or insult any religion, and we are not supposed to either, by the way. If he has written so many books on Islam, if I showed you his books and I just blotted or erased his name, you'll say a Muslim has written this book. But actually it was a Christian. He was asked once, I want to show you what it means to be a good human being. This is the religion of Islam, by the way. He was asked once, are you a Christian? And he was a Christian. If I asked you, are you a Muslim? What would you say? Yes, I'm a Muslim. You know when he was asked, are you a Christian? What he said? He said, ask my neighbor. Ask my neighbor. It's a profound response. Because it's very easy for me to say, yes, I'm a Muslim. Yes, I have taqwa and so on. But he says, ask my neighbor, because my neighbor would be the correct person to tell you whether I'm a real Christian or I'm a real Muslim or not. Because it's very easy for us to claim things. Islam doesn't want claims, it wants those actions. So beauty then is very pervasive. Where does this beauty start from? As I said, it comes from Allah. But within human connection, you know where it starts from? Again, the answer is in the Quran. You will notice that most of what I've said is from the Quran itself. Because that's where the beauty comes from. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَنْ لَا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. God has decreed, Allah has decreed that you'll worship Him only. And in the same verse, without even stopping, Allah continues, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, and you will do ihsan to your parents. And ihsan in the Quran does not mean what it means in Urdu. Ki ihsan karo hamare pe. It doesn't mean like that at all. Ihsan in our language, in my language, which is Swahili, in your language, means to do a favor. You can never do a favor to your parents after what they have done to you. Rather, ihsan means to do the beautiful deeds that is due to them, that you owe them. In other words, you will do ihsan to your parents, and that's where the beautiful deeds start when it comes to human relationship. My sisters and brothers, I want us to understand what Islam means by the beautiful deeds, by ihsan. It means that you do not discriminate against anybody, whether he's a Muslim or not. I teach comparative religions also. Although my specialty is Islam, but I teach comparative religions. I've studied the main books of most of the most important religions. In no book will you find a verse that you'll find in the Quran itself. And it's an important verse that you probably have heard of, but you should remember it. It's in chapter 5, Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 32. Man ahyaha faqad annama ahya an-nas jami'a. Man qatala nafsan bighayri nafsin aw fasadin fil ard فَكَأَنَّمَا قَتَلَ النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. The Quran says that whoever has killed one innocent soul, it doesn't say Muslim soul, it says soul. You kill one innocent human being, you have killed the whole of humanity, the Quran says. وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. You save one soul, you have saved the whole of humanity. This is the importance of sanctity of human life in the Quran. That the Quran is far more, I'm not going to say tolerate, because tolerance is a very weak word, by the way. Tolerance means you are there, I'm here, let's just tolerate each other. The Quran goes beyond tolerance, it goes embracing others. It talks of humanitarian to others. That's why remember I said that even if a mushrik comes to you, you must give them protection. Because before you are a Muslim, you are a human being first, correct? You are a human being first. Your primary identity, your first identity is not of Islam, it's that of humanity. Why do I say that? You can be a human being without being a Muslim, but you can never be a Muslim unless and until you are a good human being first. Because it's your primary identity as a Muslim. That humanity first, then Islam. You can be a human being without being a Muslim. But you can never be a good Muslim unless and until you are a good human being first. And therefore I say that our love for others, for all humanity, our love, our caring, our beauty should be like the rain. You know, when it rains, I don't know whether it rains a lot here, but you come to Canada, it doesn't rain, it snows. We had a lot yesterday. But when it rains, rain is a ni'mah of Allah. Imagine what would we do without rain, huh? We complain sometimes, but when it rains, the rain does not discriminate. He does not say that there are Muslims here, I'll fall more on the Muslims and less on the non-Muslims. Why? Because rain is a blessing from God. And Allah's blessing does not discriminate. It falls on everybody equally, because we are all God's children, so to speak. We are all God's creatures. Similarly, my love, my compassion, my kindness should be to all human beings, because then we become the vessels, the representative of Allah, through which His ni'mah reaches out to others too. But notice that whereas it rains everywhere the same, what comes out of the ground depends on what you nurture inside. If you put the seeds of an orange will sprout. You put the seeds of an apple will grow. You put the seeds of love within you, then love will grow. You put the seeds of compassion and kindness, then a compassion will grow. I always say that a good Muslim is like a radio. You know, like a radio? A radio transmits waves. But before it transmits, it must receive. The attributes that you and me have, the attributes of love, of compassion, of kindness, of mercy, where did we get them from? We did not buy them. They are actually an amana of Allah in us, a trust of God within us. Normally when you give something away, you have less of it. But the beauty of Allah's amana is this: the more you give to others, the more you receive from the one who gave it to you in the first place. In other words, the more you love fellow human beings, the more you will experience the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more you forgive others, the more Allah will forgive you. And remember, we as human beings do not have a right to judge others. We can say that this person is a Muslim, a Christian, etc., but I do not know the interior of others. Again, the verse is in the Quran. The Prophet is told, فَإِنَّمَا عَلَيْكَ الْبَلَاغُ وَعَلَيْنَا الْحِسَابُ. Allah says, O Prophet, upon you is to deliver the message, upon us is to do the accounting. In other words, not even Allah can account, not even the Prophet can account who's going to go to heaven or hell. That's only Allah's job. فَإِنَّمَا عَلَيْكَ الْبَلَاغُ. Upon you, O Muhammad, is to do the balagh, is to send the message, proclaim the message. Upon us, وَعَلَيْنَا الْحِسَابُ. This is in chapter 13, verse 40, Surah Al-Ra'd. Upon us is to do the accounting. I say Muslims have got it slightly the wrong way around. We tell Allah, you deliver your message, we'll do the accounting for you. We'll decide who goes to heaven or hell. It's not up to us. The beauty of Islam reaches out to the whole of humanity and to the whole creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even to the animals, even to the plants. My sisters and brothers, you have a plant in your home, you must ensure that the plant grows, it gets enough water, enough sunlight. You don't, then you are a zalim. Because even that little plant is part of God's creation. And therefore, the Prophet is going out for a battle. Someone comes to him and says, Ya Rasulullah, mal Islam. O Prophet of God, what is Islam? And you know, the Prophet had a habit. He would say little. He would not give long, big speeches. He would say little, but what he said had deep meanings. A lot of us, you find people speak a lot, but when you analyze what they've said, Khalidabbai, you know, as we call it. They're empty drums. They're beating drums, but inside the content is very little. The Prophet would speak little, but it had deep messages. Here is a person asking the Prophet, what is Islam? Now, if it was you and me, we start talking about kalima, we talk about shahada, we talk about usul ad-din, furu ad-din. No. The Prophet says, Al-Islamu huwa ta'atu lillahi wa shafaqa lil makhluqat. Islam means to obey God, to love God, and to be kind, merciful to the whole creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't say creatures, just creation. makhluqat. Even those animals deserve our respect. Even those plants deserve our respect. You've heard this many a time, but I want you to ponder over the words that Amirul Mu'minin Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam uses. He's sending Malik al-Ashtar. Malik, his governor to Egypt. This is the Nahj al-Balagha. And he writes to him and tells him, Malik, where you are going, you'll see two kinds of people, Sinfain. إِمَّا لَكَ أَخٌ فِي الدِّينِ أَوْ نَظِيرٌ لَكَ فِي الْخَلْقِ. Either they are your brethren in religion, in other words, they are also Muslims, or they are your equal in humanity. And that's important. Imam Ali doesn't say they are other human beings. He said they are your equal in humanity. In other words, treat them both equally. Don't say that these are Muslims, I'll treat them better than non-Muslims. Because when you are the governor, you are the ruler, you are in charge with the obligation of dispensing justice. And justice means, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everybody should be treated equal. إِمَّا لَكَ أَخٌ فِي الدِّينِ أَوْ نَظِيرٌ لَكَ فِي الْخَلْقِ. Or they are equal in humanity. And that humanity means reaching out to all human beings. It is sometimes I think that these are the kind of verses from the Quran that we need to reach out and send out to the rest of humanity. This is the true Islam as far as I'm concerned. Unfortunately, today Islam has got a very bad rap, as we know. Even when it comes to how we talk, when it comes to our demeanor. You know, many a time we end up insulting others. We end up looking down upon others. Look at the Quran again and again and you'll see the opposite of what we do. وَلَا تَسُبُّ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ فَيَسُبُّ اللَّهَ عَدْوًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. This is in chapter 6, verse 106. The Quran tells Muslims, do not revile, do not insult, do not curse those who believe in other gods. Don't insult them. Don't revile them simply because they believe in other gods. فَيَسُبُّ اللَّهَ عَدْوًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. Because they will then revile and insult your God, who is the right God, the truthful God. Why do you want to insult them? Why do you want to curse them? La'an is different, by the way. The Quran uses the word sab here. Sab means to insult, to revile, to denigrate. Yes, we call in Urdu galia dena. You never do that to others. Even if they do it to you, you stand up with a moral high ground. Because if we do that, the la'an is different. La'an is something like, may God take the mercies away from those who do evil. That's a different issue completely. And you will see this theme occurring again and again. You know, many a time people read the Quran, and many a time we don't know the original Arabic. Even sometimes the Arabs have problems understanding the Quran, even though they understand Arabic, because the Quran is very rich in its language. It has nuanced meaning. One word can sometimes have up to 70 meanings, by the way. One word. The word Mawla, Awliya, Wali, and so on can have different meanings depending on the context. As you know, the word Mawla we translate is as the master. But it can even mean slave. It can mean client. It can mean friend. It can mean guardian. So when the Quran says that do not take the Jews and the Christians as your awliya, the same word as Mawla, the Quran is referring to a particular context here. That is, do not take them as your friends, as your guardians. Why? Because they are hostile to you. It doesn't mean that for all times and in all places we should not have Christian friends and Jewish friends and Hindu friends. The Quran does not mean that at all. If the Quran meant that we should forcibly convert people, there would have been no Jews or Christians left in Spain who would have thrown Muslims out. As you may be aware, Muslims entered Spain in the year of the grocery store. You have the year grocery store? 7-Eleven. Because of 7-Eleven, my students can never forget when Muslims first entered Spain. From the year 7-Eleven, To the year that Columbus got lost, and he got lost, he did not discover America. He was heading east. He ended up in the west and became a hero because of that. Columbus was a rapist. He was a criminal. Read his history and you will see what I mean. So between 711 and 1492, Muslims were in Spain almost 800 years. Muslims were in India as the rulers for over 300 years. You are all aware of it, the Mughal Empire. Muslims were in Jerusalem, they were in North Africa, where Christians and Jews lived under them. If Islam said that you must convert people forcibly or don't take them as your friends, how could Muslims have built the biggest and best civilization in human history in Andalusia, in Spain? In those days when Muslims were ruling in Spain, they used to say that if you've been to Andalusia, Andalusia means Spain, you can never go to hell because you've already been to heaven. That was a civilization, a most beautiful, accepting civilization where Jews and Christians work with Muslims. Islam never said that you must go around killing people just because they do not believe. On the contrary, the Quran says the opposite. This is the beauty of the Quran. Not only does it say, La ikraha fid din, there is no compulsion in religion, it goes further and tells the Prophet and tells us, وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَآمَنَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا. That if your Lord wished, O Muhammad, everybody would have believed. If God wanted to, everybody would have believed. But Allah does not force belief on anybody. If Allah does not force belief on anybody, who are we to do that? People are forcing belief, or they're killing Yazidis, you must convert to Islam, others will kill you. Who said that? Belief is something very personal, by the way. You and your God. And therefore the Quran is telling the Prophet to say to the Meccans, those people who are about to kill him, says, Lakum dinukum waliya din. To you is your way to God, to me is mine. Let us agree to disagree agreeably. We agree to disagree in an agreeable manner. This is the Quranic outlook, by the way. And somebody said very correctly that Islam, if we believe, in the olden days they used to have this image, caricature, sometimes cartoons, that a Muslim is one who's sitting on a horse with a sword in one hand, the Quran in the other. Do you remember? A sword in one hand and Quran in the other. He said if this was a true image, then all Muslims must be left-handed. Because Muslims always hold the Quran in the right hand. So they're kind of fighting with the left hand. I can barely move my left hand, let alone fight with it. It's a ridiculous image. On the contrary, up to 200 years after Islam went into Iraq and Syria, the majority of the people continued to remain Christians. Up to 200 years. And this, by the way, was a discovery made by a Western professor at Columbia University, Richard Bullier. He says the majority of the people, because before Muslims went to Iraq and Jerusalem, it was the Byzantine Christians were ruling there. The majority of the people, even after Islam went, continued to remain Christians. The conversion to Islam was slow and steady. Up to 150 years after Muslims ended up in Iran, the majority of the people continued to remain Zoroastrians, because that was the predominant religion in Iran at that time. Islam went to India, as you are aware. Muslims were the rulers. Did they convert or kill all Hindus because you do not become Muslims? The majority of the people in India until today are Hindus. Not only Muslims interact with Hindus, they sat and interact with Buddhists, with Jains, with Sikhs who came later on, and any other religion. This is the beauty of Islam. To say, therefore, as we often hear, that Islam is a religion of the sword and so on, is absolutely against the reality of the times. To give you one or two other examples, and I know my time is running short, but I think that these are ideas and issues and realities also that we need to convey to non-Muslims. Today, there are two kinds of Jews, two main groups. They are called Sephardic and Ashkenazim Jews. Ashkenazim Jews are those Jews who used to live in Europe, in Czechoslovakia, in Russia, in Poland, in France, in Germany, England, and so on. Sephardic Jews are the Mediterranean Jews. Those Jews who used to live in Morocco, and still do, by the way, Spain at one time, and then Algeria, Tunisia, and so on. But there is a big difference between the Sephardic and Ashkenazim Jews. The Ashkenazim Jews used to live under Christians. Sephardic Jews used to live under Muslims. Those Jews living under Muslims in North Africa, the Sephardic Jews, were allowed to maintain and keep their religion, keep their own law, maintain their own culture, maintain their own language, maintain their own music, everything. They could even drink wine as long as it was not done in public. And for Christians, they could eat pork as long as it was not done in public. This was the acceptance and the tolerance that Muslims showed to Jews. Now compare that with the Ashkenazim Jews who lived in Europe. Under whom? Under Christians. They suffered under the Holocaust, as we are aware. They suffered under what is called pogroms. Pogroms mean state-sponsored discrimination and mass killing. Mass suicide, mass killing. The Jews suffered under the Christians. Different areas of Europe. They were mass exiled. Muslims never did that. Because there was such a thing in Islam called amnesty, that the respect for the Ahlul Kitab and respect for other human beings. I could give you examples after examples. But one more thing before we go into the Messiah, because it is the eve of Arbaeen, of Chahlum. Muslims were asked not only to respect other people and their religions, but even their artifacts. Even whatever they left behind, their statues, their places of worship, Muslims are not allowed to destroy it. I know some of you are from Afghanistan here, but you'll recall that Muslims entered Afghanistan around 644, about 12 years after the Prophet passed away, maybe even earlier than that. And they saw the Bamiyan statues. You heard of the Bamiyan statues? What they call the Buddha statues. And Muslims not only protected it, but they preserved those statues. They did not say astaghfirullah, bid'ah, haram, and destroy them. It took those crazy Taliban in the year 2000 to go and destroy them. Muslims preserved it. Not only in Afghanistan, wherever they went, they preserved local culture, local statues, local artifacts. You go to Egypt today, you go to the museums in Cairo, they will show you what kind of bowl that Tutankhamun used to drink his soup from. The pharaohs, what kind of slippers they used to wear. They have preserved those. You go to Iran itself, they will tell you the places of worship and the culture of the Zoroastrians. You come to Africa, where I come from. We not only have preserved, we actually participated in local culture. We have absorbed local African, sometimes pagan culture into our own culture too. Because Islam never said that you destroy everything you wear and you must come and impose Islam on others. On the contrary, Islam has always been embracing. It has always preserved local culture. You go to Indonesia, you will see Java music. That's the truth. You go to India, as you are aware, there's Qawwali music, which Muslims preserve too. So it's not that Islam goes around and destroying everything. We may have problems with music, that's a different issue. What I'm saying is that Islam accepted local culture, local customs, local statues. This is the lesson that Islam has given to us. A lesson that we need to preach to others. When we talk of humanity, of how to be a good human being, we are reminded of Imam Hussein. You remember the story? That he meets Hur in the middle of the desert. Not only is Hur and his army very thirsty, even the enemy, even the animals are thirsty. The heat of the desert. What does Imam Hussein do? He turns to Abbas. Ya Abbas, isqal qawm. Ya Abbas, give them water. Not only the people, but even the horses, even the animals. Not only that, but on the day of Ashur, in Karbala, Imam Hussein asked for water. Yes, it's no shame to ask for water. Because water is God's ni'mah. It's for all human beings. But he did not taunt them. He did not say that I gave you water in the desert. Why don't you give me water now? That would be beneath him. Rather, he embraced them. He tried to guide them up to the very last minute. Our historical records tell us that Imam Hussein, on the day of Ashur, before the battle began, he came to the enemies. And he did not ride a camel. In Arab culture, if you just bring a camel with you, it's a sign that you come for peace. You have come for peace. He brought a camel and he brought a Quran. Ayyuhan nas, inna hadha dar, ad-dunya darul fana. This world will not last forever. It's darul fana. Insibuni ana man ana. Oh people, trace my lineage. Who am I? Am I not the grandson of the Prophet? Am I not the son of Fatima? Am I not the son of Ali? Judge me by this Quran. Don't judge me by what I say. Have I violated the Quran? Have I changed the halal into haram ever? This is Imam Hussein appealing to his people so that they have no excuse at all that we do not know how Hussein was. Az-Zahra Hussein, you have heard the Masaib of Karbala. I want to recite a little bit about what happened in Kufa, and then we'll continue tomorrow, inshallah. Tabari says that as the Kafila was leaving Karbala on the 11th of Muharram, Zainab is the one who made sure that all the ladies and the children were mounted on the camels. My heart tells me she must have looked towards the river, towards the body of Abbas, because it was Abbas's duty to make sure that everybody was mounted on the camels and on the horses. Our sources tell us that as Zainab was moving away from Karbala, she passed near the body of Hussein and she recited a marthia for Hussein. Oh my brother, may I be sacrificed. Oh, the one who was killed when he was thirsty. Oh my brother, you are the one whose blood flowed on his beard. Oh my brother, you are the one who stood firm on your principles. Tabari tells us that as Zainab was leaving Karbala to go towards Kufa, she turns at one time back for the final time to look at the bodies of Hussein and the ashab of Hussein. And then she turns towards Medina. She turns towards Medina and she says, Assalamu alayka ya Jaddah. Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah. Peace be upon you, O my grandfather, or the Prophet of God. You told the Muslims that when a person is dead, you must give them ghusl, kafan and dafan. You must give them ghusl. You must shroud them and then you must bury them. Come to Karbala today and look at how they have treated your Hussein. They have cut him into pieces and his body is lying on the plains of Karbala. Az-Zahra Hussein. When people are entering, when the Kafila enter Kufa, the people do not know who these are. They are told these are rebels. Saad is telling us, a person by the name of Saad, that he said that this year I came back from Hajj. I was living in Kufa. As I entered Kufa, I saw the people were rejoicing. They were smiling. I looked around. I saw a few ladies and I saw spears at the end of which were heads. I looked around more and I recognized one of the heads. This was the head of the grandson of the Prophet. It was the head of Hussein ibn Ali. I looked around more and I saw a young boy and I recognized him as Ali ibn al-Hussein, Zainul Abidin. I went to him, I said, Mawla, I am your friend. I'm one of those who loves you. Can I do anything for you? Zainul Abidin says, Ya Saad, do you have some money? Do you have some money? Saad says, Mawla, what do you want to do with money? He says, go and give it to that person who is holding the spear at the end of which is the head of my father, and tell him to move somewhere else. Because my aunt Zainab and Kulthum are standing where the head of Hussein is. When the people's gaze falls on the head of Hussein, it also falls on Zainab and Kulthum, and they have no hijab on them. Az-Zahra Hussein, Zainab and Kulthum and the Kafila entered the darbar of Ibn Ziyad. As Ibn Ziyad is wondering, who is this lady who is treated so well? Because Zainab is protected by all the ladies of the Ahlul Bayt around her. He asks, who is this lady? He is told, this is Zainab bint Ali, the daughter of Zainab. Ibn Ziyad starts taunting Zainab. We will read the khutbah tomorrow, inshallah. But in a short gist, he says, look how God has treated you and your brother. Look how he tried to divide her and what happened to him. Zainab cannot be stopped anymore. She stands up and starts speaking. Oh, Ibn Ziyad, don't think that you are victorious. Shahadat is written for us. The Quran was revealed in our house. Oh, Ibn Ziyad, God will judge between us on the day of Qiyamah. As Zainab is speaking, a person by the name of Abdullah ibn Afif. Abdullah is blind. He was blinded at Siffin. He cannot see, but he can hear. He can feel. Abdullah stands up in front of everybody and he says, oh, people, tell me, has Qiyamah arrived today? Has Qiyamah arrived? They say, Abdullah, no, it has not. Why are you asking? He says, I can hear the speeches and the words of Ali ibn Abi Talib. What is Ali doing here? Abdullah is told, this is not Ali, this is Zainab bint Ali. He says, what is Zainab doing here? He says, Zainab is brought as a captive, as a prisoner. There is the head of Hussein. Abdullah says, oh, people, give me my sword. I cannot see, but I can feel. Tell me where the enemies are, and I will hit them. I will fight against them. I have finished my madness. But one final anecdote. One final anecdote. This is the eve of Arbaeen, of Chahlum, Az-Zahra and Hussein. On Arbaeen, Zainab entered Karbala. She fell on the grave of her brother and she says, oh, my brother, I have come back to Karbala, but I am ashamed. The amanat that you gave me is lying in Sham. Sakina or Ruqayya is no longer with me. She passed away in Sham. As Zainab and the Kafila cry for Hussein, a time comes when Zainab and the Kafila are about to leave Karbala to go back to Medina. Zainab is looking at all the camels, making sure that all the babies, all the ladies, all the children are on the camels. She finds that one camel is empty. There is one person missing. Zainab is looking around. Who is missing? Arba'een is missing. Arba'een is no longer there. Zainab goes to the plains of Karbala. She sees a little tent, and inside it is Arba'een crying, Zainab. Zainab says, oh, Arba'een, we are leaving, come with us. Arba'een says, Shahzadi, I'm not going anywhere. My Asghar is here. My Abdullah is here. Arba'een stayed in Karbala for 1 full year before she returned. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. ماتم حسين. Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein.